And look, you saw us geek out on Friday when we had Martin Kove in, and I'm about to geek out again because if you were familiar with my one-on-one show that I was doing for a little bit, one of my first interviews that I had was with the creators of Cobra Kai. They're back here again. It's Josh Heald, John Hurwitz, Hayden Schlossberg. Guys, thank you for joining us once again to talk about Cobra Kai.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, it's
good
fun.
to be here.
I can't wait to talk about it again because this was one of those things where last time we spoke, we talked for like over an hour. We could have talked for 3 hours. I mean, let's not. Every time I saw you, it's like I said I felt bad because we would run into each other like the supermarket and stuff, and I'd be like, "Oh, what are you getting? So what's going to happen in season 2?"
I saw both my kids run away with a cart at one point. You're like, I think you might have to.
it was the truth. Yeah, it was the truth. But season 2 it's coming up. It's approaching, and let's talk about it, man. How was well? First of all, let's go with the success of season 1.
Sure.
Because we knew last time we spoke that the buzz was starting to happen. But I mean, then you start hearing Howard Stern's talking about it. Everybody's talking about this show. Surreal.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that we are obviously huge Karate Kid fans, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
So all we tried to do was tell the story that we would want to tell and that we would want to watch. And we were lucky that it seems that others enjoyed the kind of vision that we had for this, and it's like you said, like Howard Stern, one of our heroes.
Yeah.
So like the fact that like it's become a bit or something that was talked about on that show was crazy to us, and just seeing every day like a different random person popping up that loved it, and then just the sheer numbers, it was crazy.
Yeah, because we ran through this in the beginning when we talked about it last time on the show, was that there was that stigma at first, like, why are they doing this?
Right.
That's gone now, though. That's gone for them. I mean, from 90% of it is gone.
Yeah, I mean, it was the fun of season 1 was that we knew we were going to do this thing that was very earnest and very true to the tone of the movies and carry it forward in a way that felt like it was being honest to what the fans' expectations of a Karate Kid continuation would be, while having a lot of new stuff that hopefully got ahead of the audience and they didn't see coming. But, you also have 3 guys who write Hot Tub Time Machine and Harold and Kumar movies, and the fear is that we're going to come in and just mess it all up and ruin it. Now it's a different situation. Our magic trick is out there. We've shown to be dramatically honest in terms of what we're doing. And we hope that we can get ahead of the audience again a little bit.
Well, that's the thing, Hayden, because when we did talk to Martin Kove, one of the things that I noticed from interviewing you guys was the trust that you guys have now from everybody. And that was what Martin said. He said the reason why I was on is because of these guys. Like they sold it to me. And they just believe in it. They know it. Like that's got to be so much more comforting. And two, you don't have to worry about selling anybody. They just trust you, and you can just go and do season 2.
Yeah, I think that was the big difference in making season 2. Season 1, as much as we got along with Ralph and Billy, and we saw eye to eye and with everything. They were taking a leap of faith at the end of the day. They didn't know exactly what the tone would be, other than just reading the script. And so this year, they kind of knew the tone. They trusted us with certain things when it came to comedy, when it came to something serious. So it just made it that much better.
Does that mean that there's more pressure on you guys going into this one because everybody's seen and believes this to be a huge hit? Or does that mean there's less pressure because you already have the fans' approval?
We don't really look at it that way. Technically there would be more pressure, but, I think we're just doing our thing. We're just, we're telling the story that we've wanted to tell from the beginning. It's been, great that people are reacting the way they are. So we're just going to keep doing the same form of storytelling that we did last season and continuing the story. And like Josh said, try to get ahead of the audience, try not to make it, super predictable, and try to, get the same feels from the audience, get the same laughs from the audience, and have them first and foremost emotionally invested and connected to the characters.
Yeah, the pressure is really from ourselves. When we sit down at the beginning of the season and we have a lot of things that are, a little bit fuzzy in terms of where exactly we're going with a certain beat. And the pressure is just the 3 of us continuing that discussion with the writers, without the writers, with each other on set, during post-production. I mean, we never stop thinking about this show. Right. So we never feel it from like, oh my gosh, we have to now really, we've inherited all this other pressure. We came in to season 1 with our own baggage of pressure, and we just kind of keep it on our backs.
Yeah, and I remember you guys telling me that when you were coming up with season 1 that you knew this thing's going to hit. If this thing hits the way we want it to, then we have this planned out. We have this planned out. You've been planning out the arc for a long time. Sure. That's refreshing. But the other thing, so take me through this though, as far as you guys were actually here the day we found out that season 2 was getting renewed.
Sure.
And so take me through the because not the pressure that Roxy's talking about, but more like, okay, because there is a little bit of pressure as far as getting it out there quicker, right? So it's like, what's that process like? So let's sit down, because you guys are also buddies, you've been friends for a long time. That's got to make it easier. But what's that like? Like, how do you know, okay, here's the arc, let's start working on it now so we can get it in time?
We had a lot of the season 2 storyline prepared from the very beginning of this show. When we pitched the show, we pitched the entire first season, and we knew what the first season was setting up in terms of where we're going on April 24th. And we knew pretty much about where we were ending as well. So it was not as, okay, we know exactly what we're doing, we can start writing a script right away. But we had a lot of it figured out because of the thinking that went into the show as a multi-season arc from the beginning. But like you said, it was a very, excited, aggressive renewal in terms of, okay, you're renewed, get to work, open a writer's room as soon as possible, get into production as soon as possible, have a post-production finished as soon as possible. And it's all from a perspective of excitement and wanting to have more Cobra Kai. And our job is to make sure that that doesn't move too fast or too, where you're starting to get sloppy with certain things.
I was just going to say that it helps that we spend a lot of time together, when we're making the show, the three of us live together. It's funny, we've all been friends for over 20 years. Yeah. Josh and I lived together in college, and Hayden and I moved out to LA together, and we lived together for 5 years. So now, whenever we're making the show, the three of us have a place together, and we
go shopping.
Yeah, you might see us in the supermarket together. We're thinking and talking about the show all the time. We drive to set together, where we eat every meal together while we're making the show.
Sick of each other at all?
I mean, probably bits.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I would say so. But more. I think there's more love and more enjoying around each
brothers.
other. Yeah, exactly. But there's but because we spend so much time together, it's coming in to think of doing a season 2 or doing a season 3 or going forward. We've had these conversations just nonstop for a while, so it doesn't feel as daunting.
Right? Yeah.
When you have those conversations, I heard that you guys planned a lot of season 2. How much of that actually makes it to what we're going to see in season 2, and how much of it did you have to throw out and say, all right, that was a nice conversation, but it's not making the cut?
That's a good question, because you go in with these thoughts, and then you actually start writing things, and that leads you to different directions. We knew we had a lot of storylines that we wanted to use in season 1 that didn't fit. So we were like, okay, well, we're going to put them in season 2. And some we did, but others we still haven't been able to find the right room for. So
there's a ridiculous comedic, potentially multi-season arc that Hayden especially loves, that has been in discussions since day 1 of the writers' room season 1, and still is not in the show.
Right.
But could show up, at any point.
It will.
But it totally will.
It's gonna end up there. Yeah. It'll be there. But there's a lot of stuff like that, and. The thing that's fun is we'll come up with the way our process works is the three of us will come up with a ton of stuff on our own, and we'll have all these index cards on the wall, and we'll bring in the writer's room, and we'll kind of download everything with them. And most of the stuff that's starts on the wall stays on the wall and isn't in the season, because there's just so many ideas, and you're just trying to sort of weave through, okay, which of these different training methods might fit within the story that we're telling this season, which
But it's interesting for a writer. I mean, because every show is different. With our show, it's the writers come in and they kind of they hear what's going to be happening and where the main goalposts are. And then it becomes how do we get there?
Yeah. Because it's super serialized also, there's not a lot of breaking story and saying, okay, let's move on to episode 7. What's that about? It's more likely that going into the season, an idea we have that feels okay, this is an episode might turn into, okay, no, that takes place over 3 episodes, or actually, no, that's just a joke in one scene. And it's more likely that would happen than an entire thing would just leave. But occasionally a discussion takes you in a place where you add to it, and by the time you're done, it looks quite different than where we started.
So how many episodes this season?
10 again.
10 again. Okay. So and they're half an hour apiece. Close to
Approximately,
it?
yeah. They trend some a little less than a half hour, some a little more, but right around the 30-minute mark.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about what you can tell me about the story this season. For example, when is Elizabeth Shue coming back?
This is the time we're going to tell you.
Finally
this
going
is
to
the
answer the
moment.
question.
All right. No, but as far as so just give me a little, because we've seen the trailer. The trailer so far brilliant. I love that scene with Johnny's son and Daniel as they're in the dojo, and he's telling them the lessons, and the kid just doesn't get it. He's got Johnny. He's got too much Johnny in him, but he doesn't get it. But what kind of themes are we going to see? What should we know about the story this season going in?
Well, we know that, look, the season 1 ended with a dramatic return of John Kreese. So that is inherently going to bring another fatherly sort of storyline to the season, for better or worse, in terms of here's a guy we know who had a very dysfunctional father-son relationship with Johnny.
Who choked him out in the park?
Right. And without the choking, who's that remind us of? Well, Johnny's, dysfunctional relationship with his own son.
Right.
And now you have this, his son being mentored by the other guy. So it's a lot of that stuff. Nothing drops. We are continuing with everything you care about. We are, continuing to tell that story, and it's not like, well, that didn't get resolved. And this whole idea of season 1 was always meant to set up season 2, which we always describe as dojo versus dojo, a fight for the soul of the valley. And it's now that Daniel has been truly awakened in the real way in terms of knowing what his purpose is, well, what does that mean for a guy who doesn't live in Reseda and have nothing? He's a guy who lives, on the mountaintop and has a family and a business and other responsibilities in his life. So we're throwing more things at this rivalry and at these two guys who are incredibly passionate and have let their philosophies and resentments bleed down to the next generation. And speaking of that next generation, there's a lot going on with those kids also.
There's a ton there, and that's one of the things we're really excited about is, we've all fell in love with Daniel and Johnny and the characters of Karate Kid, and it's been awesome for us to see people really connect with the young audience on our show. And I mean, we have an amazing group of actors. Each and every one of these kids, they're fantastic. And not only are they great actors, they're good people, and they also desperately want to know as much karate as possible, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So when you see fights that some of these kids are in, I mean, it's mostly them.
Yeah, well, that's what we said last time too. I think that the reason that this show was such a massive hit was because it spoke to both generations for sure. To the Karate Kid fanatics in here, absolutely. But now the new people who didn't know it, I'm really curious to how many people went back to watch Karate Kid for the first time after the show. I wonder how many. I'd love to see those numbers. I just showed my 7-year-old. She finally watched Karate Kid. I think I had sent you a message.
Yeah.
Loved it. Loved it. And I told Martin when he was on, that's the bad man, right? I knew. But it's. What it is doing is introducing this movie to new people for sure, but going inside of all these things that I love. But this is the question that I have for you guys too, because you had mentioned this last time. How do you make sure that you throw these isms in there that I love and the references, but you don't overdo it?
Well, you just don't. That's not your focus. Your focus is the story, and then you naturally are going to have moments where you think, okay, this character is thinking about their past. We have that footage.
Right.
Right. What is that moment that captures that? So it's you're never going in with the attitude of okay, how can we utilize this footage? You go in with, okay, let's make this kind of 50% Better Call Saul, 50% Dynasty, kind of story. And we happen to have this backstory, this Old Testament that you can call back on, which ultimately affects everybody's life. Our past, it's for the story is about these characters trying to get over, at least Johnny, get over the past. So we have to have that footage is awesome. It just has to be used in a way where you're just kind of you're emotionally connecting to it. It's being used as a tool for storytelling. Not
It seems part of the world.
Yeah.
And
totally.
it helps that there's 3 of us also because every once in a while you'll film something and you're watching it in the editing room and you're like, it's a little much.
Okay.
And then you pull it back.
That makes sense.
I love how passionate you guys are, even in this conversation. And Christian always calls us your Star Wars. Like, this is to you as Star Wars is to a lot of people.
I think Star Wars is to them what Karate Kid is to
Okay.
us.
Did you guys ever have this conversation about a different franchise? Were you ever thinking about giving something else the Cobra Kai treatment?
Well, I mean, the truth is, a lot of those movies, like Back to the Future and Star Wars, are all in the same like video box that we had back in the day. So, it's like Back to the Future is one of those things where you could think of all different types of ways of going about it. It's so tricky because on the one hand, you're so connected to those actors and those characters, the way we are with Daniel and Johnny and Ralph and Billy. On the other hand, you have this great story that, 20 years from now or 30 years from now, it's going to be weird to watch, and see like, oh, wait, the past was the 50s, the 80s is the present,
Right.
So
Right.
it's like, it's begging for a remake, at some point in the future. It's like destined to happen, but it's also like sacrilege.
I know. What's so funny you say that because when we first met, back in, I think it was like 2012, there was this report going around. You guys said, we're doing the Back to the Future.
Oh my God, yes.
And it never happened.
That's right. Yeah.
I remember that. But the thing is, too, that was back then. When I guarantee if that same report comes out today, people go, well, what's the Cobra Kai guys that say? You know what I mean?
We have a little bit more cred now,
There's
but
more cred.
But at the same time, it's one of those things that all the complexities that Hayden mentioned exist with that, and if that was ever going to happen at some point, like we will raise our hands, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I could see. Because we had a lengthy discussion about it on this show, to where I think I was the only person in the room that I think you could do something very similar to what you guys did with the franchise, and you could the DeLorean's found years later, and it's another kid, and maybe Marty pops in and does something, and we have some kind of conversation. You could do something. There is a story out there, and I think you guys have proven that.
I think it will
yeah.
happen. I think just in the ether, like it's there. You have Spielberg and you have Zemeckis and these.
And it's a similar story with Goonies. I mean, that's another one that's always talked about in terms of someone should really. And there's just so many companies and personalities, and besides all the baggage of like, oh my God, like you're talking about opening the Ark.
Yeah, you guys didn't just walk in and go, hey, we're going to do Cobra Kai today. You had to like go through a lot of meetings to get that done.
Yeah, and it was interesting, who owns the rights and what they're doing right now. And so like anything that has Spielberg involved, he's going to be interested in that and have a say. And so I think one of the reasons why Cobra Kai worked out was, we were able to kind of just have this sort of creative control, as if it was like one of the franchises that we.
It was
created.
very dormant. I mean, they had made the Jaden Smith movie. It did very, very well, but then nothing had really materialized after that in terms of a sequel that Sony was saying, we have the script, it's awesome, we're going to go make it. We kind of watched and sat back and expected something to happen, and when it didn't, it felt like, okay, this is a good time in terms of once we knew if we could, get some, permission to use the rights, that Sony would probably be excited about this piece of IP. Yeah. It was timing. I mean, I think all of these, there's tons of movies from our childhood that you'd say, oh my God, it would be a dream to start digging into it, but you also go like, is it begging for it? This one really felt like there was a story inherent with the Billy character that, with Johnny, that felt like, okay, I know what that show is for us.
The thing, too, with, like you mentioned, Goonies, Back to the Future, Karate Kid, these are movies that you say you introduced to your daughter. These are movies that still hold up.
Oh, yeah.
There was a lot of movies that if you watch back, like, don't.
Yeah.
And I think that by doing Cobra Kai, you proved the fact that, like, maybe a full reboot of a movie isn't necessary, but doing a continuation with a series is something that is like ripe and prime right now.
I mean, I think it is possible, like for any of those things that you talked about. The interesting thing about like the 1980s, there was no, like Disney didn't dominate like it did today. Right. So we had live action movies that like skewed a little older. You know, and so we look back on that era, and you know, we have these movies like Back to the Future, which has a couple moments in it that I don't know if like Pixar would have
Right.
Biff and Lorraine in the back of the car, and
Yeah.
like all sorts of like moments like that.
Marty is there to sexually assault his mother.
You know, I mean, and there's you know, so you know, I think that there's like, and I think you see it with Stranger Things, and Cobra Kai is connected to that. This desire to have this type of storytelling, which doesn't exist today because you can't get it in movies.
Right.
Like you're not going to like make a Goonies like this action adventure for kids unless it's like an established book that like you know
Well, streaming's changed the game on that too, though. Too, as you guys have proven,
sure.
because 10 years ago or 15 years ago on network television, you guys can't do this show the way that you do it. There's no way. Like the development inside of these characters help because of these streaming things, and part of that because I remember the whole conversation about YouTube because it wasn't really. There weren't any big shows on it. You guys were like the massive show. Do you guys just walk around like the kings over there? You have to. You guys are the kings of that thing.
We walk around like kings anyway, but now it feels a little more earned. No, we're very, very grateful.
Yeah.
You know, we keep our heads down and do our work. But yeah, everything you said we agree with. I mean, you see, you know, Stephen King, you know, Castle Rock. You know, like taking a world of, you know, instead of saying, okay, we're going to go remake Shawshank Redemption, you know, take the best pieces of things and create a world. I mean, is there a show called Hill Valley that we should make and pitch and sell? Like, I don't know. You tell us. But yeah, I mean, we like the streaming aspect of it just gives you the ability to go into it where it's not just, oh, I see what they're doing. It's the underdog kid and the thing and the it gives you so many points of view to play with where you can jump around and create a world that you care about in terms of the tone and paying homage to the original material and find new ways to go that isn't just, okay, we know that story, here it is again.
The first time around, a lot of people used their free trial on YouTube Red to watch your guys' show. Did YouTube have a discussion with you at all about whether ramping up to this, people have been subscribing to YouTube Red, or do you guys have any kind of awareness of what those numbers have looked like?
They haven't told us the exact numbers, but needless to say, there was a huge spike when Cobra Kai came out and continues to, you know, it's helped immensely. And I think, you know, they were eager for us to get, you know, season 2 out. And, hopefully we'll be, you know, doing seasons for years to come. We'll find out.
So last season obviously ended with a tournament. Will every season end with a tournament?
No.
Definitely not.
Okay.
We just felt like and I'm not saying whether or not season 2 does end with one, but it's if you have a tournament at the end of every season, it's going to start feeling like
Villain of the week type stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happens here? Does the building catch on fire? You know, what do you do to keep, you know, raising the
I
stakes?
see. Okay.
Do you guys have a dream amount of seasons? I know you said you've planned out to the end of the series, so.
Well, I think we know where we want the characters to be at the end, and then it's just like we happen to have planned out like a few seasons ahead. After last season, we started thinking, okay, well, how would this work? You know, and so we have, you know, a few seasons in mind, so we feel confident. Like, okay, we could definitely. I don't want to throw a number out, but like the truth is,
12.
it's like, you know.
I was going to say 26. But,
I was going to say, like, even, you know.
What are the Simpsons? Whatever they're doing.
We
like,
enjoy making the show, and so it's kind of like Rocky. It's like, okay, well, did they need Rocky 2? Well, actually, yeah, because
Right.
Rocky 4 was awesome. You know, like,
Right.
And so I think that you just like, as long as we're inspired and like want to get those Karate Kid feels out there and montages and like, you know, the interesting like kind of bully angle, like I think, you know, there's a lot of potential for the show to go on more than what we think. But I think, like, you know,
we have a lot of chunks of future storylines that we know we're telling,
Yeah.
and we know some of those things are an entire season in and of themselves. And it's, you know, it's funny as we write. Sometimes, you know, you think you're going to get to a place, and then you realize you're not even there yet. So, you know, in the beginning, it felt like, okay, it's X amount of seasons, but that number has grown in terms of where we are now at the end of season
But
2.
we've always been these kinds of writers. You know, we're guys who made franchises in the feature world.
Right.
So we always would fall in love with our characters and want to continue telling stories with those characters. And the thing that happens in the writer's room on this, or just making the show, is, you know, we love all these characters. We have thoughts about all the characters, and like even the most minor characters, we talk about them at length.
Maybe more than the major characters.
Probably more than the major characters, but no, we talk about them at length, and we're always thinking about different places we could go. So it's hard to know exactly how many seasons there
Well,
would be.
speaking of that, because there are a couple of things. So one of the things that I asked Martin when he was on the show, and I think I asked you last time, was about Dutch. and what he told me on the air was that the fact that you guys, you know, there was something that you guys definitely had in mind for him, and then he called him up.
Yep.
Called him up, but he's just not interested in doing it at the moment.
We had a storyline that we were considering. It was in the baby stages of, thinking about, and none of us, just like we didn't know Ralph Macchio, we didn't know Chad McQueen.
Yeah.
And Marty. It's great having, Cobra Kai's around to make calls to other Cobra Kais.
Right.
So Marty was helpful in calling Chad, and I think it was a mix of schedule and everything else, but it wasn't able to come to fruition.
But
So
there was
that's not to say
there was
can't,
one period of time where there looked like there could have been a meeting in the desert.
Yeah.
I think he lives in Palm Desert, and it was like
There was a moment.
we were all willing to like take a drive to Palm Desert to meet with Chad McQueen,
so great.
which would have been like
its own little mini documentary.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
you never
But-
know. I mean, the hope is that we do the show for a while, and that you could have conversations with any
Right.
of these characters. We talk about. We've had conversations with characters that are not in season 2, or actors that are not in season 2 that
From the previous movies and stuff?
from
Oh, yeah.
from the movies, from season 1, characters
Yeah.
that don't show up in season 2, because anyone in this universe can show up at any time.
Yeah,
It's got to
we've
be
engaged-
Elizabeth Shue, right?
What's that?
It's got to be Elizabeth Shue, right?
That's what we're hoping. Well, no,
Well, we've engaged
I'm
a
hoping
lot of
Tommy.
them, yeah.
Tommy's got to show up. Tommy's got to show up.
We've talked with everybody from season 1. We talked with a lot of the guys
Yeah.
from the movie, and in a way of like, let's have an ongoing dialogue that, hey, if we were to ever do this, or hey, if your character goes away but comes back, we want to continue to have a family.
Yeah.
The three of us, when we first moved to Los Angeles, and a little before even, we watched the show Oz.
Oh, yeah.
And we loved
yeah.
that from day one. You have this full prison. On episode 1, you're following Dino Ortolani. Oh, he's dead. And
right,
spoiler
right.
for the pilot. It's on 20 years ago.
No big deal.
But then all of a sudden you're in season 2 and 3, and you're meeting characters that have been there the whole time, but now they have the full arc.
Yeah.
And we think of this show the same way, where it's we're building this world. We think about our background actors, constantly in terms of making sure that there's continuity in terms of who's in the dojo and who's in the school, who's in the world.
You could feature them at any time.
They,
That's
they could
smart.
pop up,
I love that.
and so that's
Yeah,
how
somebody
we think
who's
about
been
it.
on the
Yeah.
show for 2 years that has never had a line suddenly has a line.
I love that.
Is there like a because it's such a beloved franchise, right? And we talk about it all the time. All the time.
Oh, they know.
I'm sure you guys get the fandom
Us
here,
too, us
right?
too.
Is there, or like, do you meet friends or something, maybe like a dinner party, and like, so have you guys thought about doing this? Like, are you pitch things? Like when you're a comedian, your dad's like,
Yeah.
they don't fill your soda. You
My,
can do a bit on that.
my dad is the main one for me. I mean,
Yeah.
there's plenty of people, but it's fun because my dad, I give him a sneak peek at season 2, and he's already asking me questions about different characters.
When are you
and
going to mention
different
soda?
things. My dad's a big fan of the pawn shop guy from season 1,
yeah,
so
yeah,
he was
yeah.
just like, "Is he coming back?" Like that. Like those are
But
the kinds of
it's
questions.
funny because like my mom will go online and read comments, and she'll be like, "Are you bringing Chosen back?" And I'm like, "Do you know who Chosen is? Is Terry Silver coming in this season?" So like, there's a lot of like hardcore Karate Kid fans that will say like, okay, well, you have to bring Barnes back. I mean, you just have to.
Yeah, it's fun.
There's
I mean,
no
like-
way you're not. And then so it's like you're fun being like, listen, I don't know, maybe like
And for us,
this
it's
makes
fun
sense.
really going online and seeing some of the fake spoilers or the people who think they
Barnes
know what's
comes back
happening.
and fights Joseph.
I saw the one cup was turned like this. That must mean that this is, and it's like, no, that was just how they put down the cup, but or is it? But we love that there's such a, that just means that you're connected. I mean, like when you're thinking that deeply about
Yeah.
what every move means. I mean, we thought about that with The Sopranos back in the day, with like, oh, the Pine Barrens, like that guy must be
What's that
coming
mean?
back.
Right. Well, what's that? But the question though too, because obviously the fans will come up with their theories and who they hope to see. But have you gotten emails and calls from some people that were in the franchise? Like,
Sure.
Definitely.
Definitely.
That's kind of one of the things. Have you guys? Because you don't say whether or not she's in it or not, but have you met or talked with Hilary Swank?
No comment. I mean, the truth is we have, but the comment we can say is we have talked to people from the original movies that have not been on the show yet.
Yeah.
You know, like, and so, you know, and that's ongoing. And sometimes it's like, you know, it's a Twitter engagement, and other times it's just like, okay, it's like we end up meeting up.
And you hear things, you know, through representatives or through friends of friends, or like, you know, hey, you know, they are aware of the show and love you guys, and for us, you know, sometimes we will talk or not talk to somebody, or just know from the start that, hey, this is casual, this is an ongoing conversation, because we don't want to just let our own nostalgia drive a storyline, or like, oh my gosh, we had such an amazing, you know, lunch or drinks or, you know, a conversation. Now we have to find a way, because it'd be awkward not to. We want to make sure that we keep telling the story that we set out to tell, because we know in the story, in the grand big story, you know, when it's all said and done, that we will have made room for everybody.
Has anybody straight up said no to you guys? You called, you wanted them on the show, and they said nah.
Not exactly. No, I mean, you have conversations, and sometimes it takes convincing, and sometimes, you know, the conversations are ongoing.
I think I asked Bill Murray to play Tom Cole in season 1.
How did you get?
I didn't actually get to
yeah.
Bill Murray, but I did I was like,
The
all right,
voice message
I
you know,
think
yeah.
that, you know, casting was like, yeah, let's take some big shots, and I was like, here it goes. Here goes absolutely, literally nothing. And you know, I made the Bill Murray answering machine phone call that people have made, and didn't hear anything back. So technically, Bill Murray passed.
He didn't say no. He did not say no.
He may have not gotten that
He
message.
did not say no.
What is the craziest thing that you guys have pitched so far that did not make it onto the show? Something that one of you guys just threw out there, and everybody was like, nah, can't do that.
I'm trying to think, because there's things that have been pitched that we have said absolutely not yet.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's things that we have said like absolutely not, get out of here and don't come back for the rest of the day.
Daniel can use the Force.
Because we just know, like, even the most ridiculous, you know, silly joke that has nothing to do with anything, there might be a character or a place with that, because there's so many.
You know, an
points of view on
interesting
the
thing
show.
is we have a lot of footage from the original movies that you haven't seen. So like there's scenes that were deleted that were never in like a deleted scene section of the DVD. So it's like we have these memories that the audience wasn't in on.
Right.
And you know why they were cut from the film. You can see, you know, narratively, like, oh, that makes no sense. I'm
Do
surprised.
those play as canon inside your heads, those writers, though?
Well, that's the interesting thing. Like that was one of those things. Like this season, we saw, and there wasn't like enough time. Like it came in the middle of the season.
Yeah, we put a request
Yeah.
out at the beginning of the season for as many dailies as we can get for certain parts of all the Karate Kids that we might want to reference in the show, because it takes a lot of time for them to go actually out to the salt mine where they're buried and clean off the negative and digitally upload it.
Right.
And by the time we get it, we're in post-production, and some of that stuff we might not want anymore, and some of the stuff comes and they're like, oh, we accidentally also got this. And you never know what this is when you brush it off and look at it.
But it's interesting. I mean, that's the question. Is it canon? Like it could. Like I feel like in real life, people like have these like memories. Like, did that happen or
Right,
not?
yeah.
You know, and so like
His whole weekend was like that.
I view it as there's everything that I've seen thus far. I view as canon in
Yeah.
a weird way. Like there hasn't been anything that's super inconsistent with the story that we know. So in my mind, it's canon, but I don't know.
But anyway,
Yeah.
that was something like it was like, oh wow, this is like a nice little treasure trove, and like
Right.
we want to take advantage of this, and it's just like we can't do it right now. It just didn't. It was too late in the game to get that info.
Can you tell us what any of those things are that we haven't seen?
It's more like Johnny Daniel interaction in the school. Like there was more than just what we saw. Like there's more, without like spoiling the scenes. It's just like more encounters that they
And
had.
there's a richer story. I think the original Karate Kid script is out there somewhere, but we have like the actual lined script that they used to film. So there were scenes shot, you know, with Daniel and his mom that aren't in the film, that obviously you can tell watching that movie 900 times like we have, her whole storyline was morphed and shaped, and there must have been more there in terms of her job and what happened. But there was lots of that stuff that you understand why the movie didn't need that,
Yeah.
but it does raise that question to us. If we find a nugget that looks so juicy for something that we might want to use, it can become canon because there are holes anyway that we are inventing in terms of backstories for characters that were not touched on. But we're just trying not to challenge those.
Is Louis coming back? Can't say.
We're not.
Maybe.
We can't say.
Can't say.
Can't say either way.
Can't say either way.
What we
Okay.
can say is that we love Brett Ernst,
Yeah.
and he's amazing,
legend.
and he's somebody who we view as a character that we love in this universe.
Yeah, we can't say who's coming back and not coming back besides the series regulars that people know are coming back. But anybody who does either come back or does not come back once you see this season does not mean that they
won't
can't
be back. I understand.
Has there been a point when you guys were shooting where, first of all, I usually give TV a 3-episode test. If it doesn't have me by the 3rd episode, I'm out. This one had me like 15 minutes in, right? Because when you guys take that chance with Billy's, when Johnny, that's a big chance, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Was there any points when you're doing some of the fight scenes or some of the karate stuff that you like cut and you say, man, it would be great to have Pat Morita here. It would be great to have Mr. Miyagi.
It would be amazing to have Pat Morita. Just Mr. Miyagi is a huge character on our show, despite him not really being there. He occasionally shows up in flashback, but his spirit permeates the entire Miyagi-Do karate storyline. Everything going on with Daniel, he's there. So it would have been amazing to have been able to make the show with Pat here. Pat's absence has led to us thinking outside the box, and we think creatively. It's there's still a lot to do with him without him being there in the flesh.
The disappointing thing is that right after we around the time we pitched this show, John Avildsen passed away, and we never got a chance to sit down with him and at least tell him what this could have would be. We never got a chance to meet Jerry Weintraub. Pat is no longer with us, but this process has been able to have us establish a relationship with Robert Mark Kamen, who wrote the original movies, and we've established a friendship and a mutual respect for each other that we already had for him, and we're hoping he is starting to have for us. But that he's one of those other links besides Ralph, Billy, Marty, these guys from the movies.
So Bill Conti's not around, right? So,
Conti is around. We have not. We have not.
But as far as is he working with you?
Well, he's not working with us. We're able to use his music as part of the arrangement they have, but he's somebody that is on our radars in terms of we would like to sit down because musically, I grew up with playing a lot of instruments, and that music meant a lot to me,
Right.
but it means a lot to all of us between all the movies that he's scored.
But you haven't. So conversations though, as far as him doing something.
Well, we have Zach and Leah who do our composing.
Yeah.
They do a tremendous job for the show, but we're also able to use Conti music in certain chunks.
Yeah.
And the combination of that is amazing because sometimes they're able to reorchestrate a section of Conti or use a Conti theme to blend into a new song. But they've last season we only orchestrated the 10th episode in terms of a full orchestra. The rest of it was all synthesized. This season, all 10 episodes, full orchestra.
Oh, wow.
Just like that 10th episode with you watch this if you have a good Dolby surround sound system, you will hear the strings and the French horns, and it's a legit.
Will we hear Best Around in season 2?
We're not going to tell you which songs. What I will say is
they're going to have a cameo.
We got Cruel Summer in the trailer.
We'll say that there's at least one song from the original films that shows up,
Okay,
and
cool.
we.
Right. It's going to be a lot of nice references. But the other thing, and I can't remember if you guys told me this last time, but because I know we said that the Hilary Swank and all that stuff, that's part of the actual where you guys, it's all canon stuff.
Sure.
Is the Jackie Chan, and is that part of the same lore? No, it's a different universe, parallel universe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
For any of the actors who either schedulally can't make it or who have passed away, did you guys ever talk about recasting? Was that ever on the table?
Not. I mean, if you're doing a different moment in life, we've established that on the show, like Johnny as a kid, so we had a younger actor. So, but we're not like.
But yeah, like
we don't want to hire a new Miyagi to play
a big dramatic scene it would feel a little inauthentic. We try to be creative with how we play those moments from the past in terms of letting them influence the future, so it doesn't feel inauthentic. I mean, we were blessed last season to have Randy Heller come back, who plays Daniel's mom.
Right.
As much as we can, kind of reach to the actual past to tell our future story. That
You
helps.
could if we flash back to him as a kid, that could be your way to see to see that. So there's the ability to kind of see these actors, or the characters again in a different time.
And just like the first season, I'm sure season 2 will have a lot of references to a lot of the series of the films too. Because I'm curious, and again, I know you're not going to tell me anything, but I've always been very curious because in Karate Kid 2, I mean, he falls in love. I mean, head over heels, and then third one, she's never even mentioned ever again. And that's what I thought you guys did so
She
great.
couldn't get a visa. I think there was an issue.
Yeah. So, that's the thing is because in your series, things that I said, well, they didn't even mention that stuff anymore. It's all mentioned, like the stuff that it kind of relates through, and I'm assuming that things like that will be addressed.
Yes,
no doubt.
Okay.
There are things from the original Karate Kid movies that you may have forgotten that come up.
Right.
It's we know all those movies inside and out, and all the nooks and crannies we're looking in, and they may show up in reference or story point. And
Yeah, the
we'll find
first
out.
season referenced all 3 movies. The second season does as well.
And then I'm assuming Daniel will break ice at some point.
We hope.
Was there any one point in either season 1 or season 2 where you guys just had an awesome friend fight about one thing in the show, where you're just like, no, it's going in.
We can't talk about it.
We do have, but
Yeah.
we have passionate friend fights that are professional fights, but because we're friends, they can get heated because we know what each other's boundaries are, and sometimes we do, but we will occasionally have a completely different idea over a moment that is so trivial to the overall series or even that episode, but it just we'll get a moment of passion where
It's those little details,
it's black
man.
and white,
Yeah,
and I'm right and you're wrong, and,
Well, it's
and
like
I don't know how we're getting
there's
past
times
this
where
moment.
there's times where an idea is created for a specific reason or an homage to a type of movie or something like that, and
One of us really cares
one
about
of us
that.
really
and
cares
the
about
other-
that. The other just viewed it as a plot point, and then so it's okay, well, you can't change this, or else it takes out the integrity of the whole thing,
But
and
we-
then you end up in these.
I want to see this fight.
we've talked about actually having a karate mat in our writers' room, and it's let's take it to the mat. Let's see where we're gonna have that.
Yeah, we
But
try to have.
Who would win?
I don't know. I'm the biggest of the three of us, but probably the slowest.
I'm
I don't
more
know.
likely to get injured. So
It depends if the no mercy rule applies. If fish hooking and eye gouging is involved.
Then you'd win.
Yes.
Which
Yeah.
one of you guys has seen the movie the most, or the movies?
It's hard to
tough.
say.
probably
Yeah.
all of us. I mean, we all had it on VHS as kids, and watched it incessantly.
And
How many times are we talking?
Whenever, I mean,
Hundreds?
I mean, it's
Really?
whenever, it's one of those things. Whenever it's on television, and I can speak for myself. My wife is the same way. Anytime it's on television, she puts it on, and
Is that just the first one though, or how many? What about the other ones?
Specifically the first one, but
Yeah.
the second one often. I think for my wife, certainly the first one. For myself, I see the words Karate Kid, and I'm flipping
That's
it
it.
on.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever get disappointed? Because this happens with me with Point Break. When you see Karate Kid and it's the Jaden Smith one, you're like, son. That was a bad
This
movie.
is not. It's
it
not.
was
it's
just
not-
different.
Yeah, it's disappointing only because of the childhood connection that
right.
we all have.
Yeah.
That movie is a very fine movie, but
It
yes,
wasn't ours.
absolutely.
It wasn't ours.
Yes.
Absolutely, we
Right.
get disappointed.
It was difficult because that movie alone. I remember when they announced it. I was absolutely one of those, because you guys know how much I love this franchise, that I was like, no, don't do it. But I say it a million times over. It was a very well made movie.
Well,
It wasn't-
imagine the disappointment of the Gen Z kid who's hoping to see that Jackie Chan,
Right.
Jaden Smith thing,
Right.
and then turns in
Exactly.
and
And
fuck
sees-
that kid.
Right.
Yeah. But we have in Harold and Kumar 3, there's a generational joke about the two Karate Kids.
Right. And then, here's the other thing. Just mentioning, I want to mention also with Billy and Ralph, because we know the whole story. If you guys haven't listened, you should go back to the one-on-one and listen to how they both got the guys involved. It's really fascinating, a lot of fun. But now, obviously with the trust there too, but is there a lot more now? Are they getting more involved? It's, they come in pitching stuff with their characters, and is there more collaborative, or are you guys like, we got it?
They're inherent. They from the very beginning, they've just been very, very actively involved with how these characters are portrayed, the dialogue, the movements, the intent.
Are they producers?
They are producers
They
of
are,
the show,
yeah.
yeah. But they are, I mean, they're the opposite of the actor who would show up and be like, all right, where are we standing? All right, over here, say these lines, great, I'm out. We have conversations all year long about where we're going. And sometimes those are difficult places that, we have to, hopefully try to get them to see what we see, that's way in the distance, and why things in a micro moment might be a little bit of a disconnect with what their attitudes and ideas are of those characters. But it's a fun process watching them grow these characters and really, really care about it.
You hear a lot about Netflix being really creator friendly. Is YouTube very similar to that?
It's been great. I mean, the very minimal notes, and the notes are always with the take it or leave it kind of attitude. Usually, it's just a conversation. We hear the notes, and we usually give them a call or send them an email back and say, here, this is why why we don't want to address this note because of the long game. And then they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And oftentimes, there's some good thoughts there that help us out.
Hey, Riley or Cody, you guys in the booth there, I'd like to get some questions from the fans. I know that they've been submitting some stuff through Facebook and Twitter. I want to have Roxy. Roxy wants to ask one more thing. Can we just pull up a few of those and maybe have a couple phone calls for the guys?
Speaking of the fans, I have not met a single person who did not love this show. I really have not met one.
True.
Have you guys received any negative feedback from anyone?
Minimal. It's weird how much people like it. We know, when you make a second season of something, as proud of it as we are, and we believe that it lives up to the first season and all that, there are going to be people who now have lived with this for a year. So they're going to start saying, oh, I don't like what they did here. I don't like this.
Or they won't.
Or they won't. We'll find out. I mean, we didn't think the reaction would be what it was the first season, but some of the complaints have at times been like, I love this, but the first season had some stuff that was a little racy, and I wouldn't want to show this to my kid. There's a little bit of that stuff, and then there's a lot of like, I love the show because I could watch it with my children. So it's really your own personal barometer of what you feel comfortable with, but that's the biggest kind of thing that we heard, and it's very minimal.
Yeah, there's certain things within 10 episodes and a half hour, like sometimes our dreams for the story outweigh like the amount of time that we have, and so we've we go on the comment section and we see like every single not positive thing there. But I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, like it's just been overwhelming, and like you just feel like, okay, the important thing is like people are getting the feels of Karate Kid again. That's what we're going for. That mixed with the comedy for an older audience that remembers certain things and is able to look at your past in a different way because you're an adult now.
Yeah.
And you see like, oh, that asshole bully from your school had his own, like he wasn't just this when you're 12 years old, they're just like this, they're Hitler. That's it.
Right.
And then you learn, oh, okay, like I understand why, they had a drunken, crazy father or whatever.
Yeah, it's funny though, because you see just again how the attitude in general has switched dramatically of why are they doing this to when is it coming back? Because my wife, very similar to that, to where when I first told her about the show, she's like, really, they're doing this? And we watched, she's in episode 1. So then as we were waiting for our shows to come back, and she's like, when are our shows coming back? And I was like, which ones do you want? She's like, Cobra Kai? I was like, end of April. It's coming out, so people are excited about it. I think we have some fans kind of either doing Facebook or, do we have a phone call, Cody? Not yet? Okay, let's do Facebook. Riley, what do you got?
Yeah, big question. A lot of people are wondering if you had in your perfect world, how many seasons do you want for Cobra Kai?
It's hard to say because, like we said before, we have so many future storylines that in and of themselves could constitute a whole season. But the bigger our world has grown, especially in season 2, with the amount of characters that you are invested in and care about, you don't want to just brush them aside to rush ahead to any of that stuff. So we can't put a number on it, but it would be a lot.
Yeah, because you really don't know, right? Because there can be somebody like you were talking about before, and there's somebody in the background that like, well, wait a minute.
That's a rich story.
It's like wrestling, though. It's like wrestling where you find that there's The Rock at one point was Rocky Maivia, and nobody knew who he was, and he did this ridiculous thing, and then he started cutting these promos like, well, that guy's a star.
Yeah.
And that can happen. It's one of those.
It's an ongoing soap opera in a lot of ways.
Right.
But I mean, there's a major through line that is a distinct story that's connected to a major rivalry. But there are so many soap opera elements that stretch this thing out. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So Ryan, what else? What else you got?
You guys did such a good job with the nostalgia. A lot of people are wondering if you could get your hands on another franchise that
You're asking
people
all the
love.
questions
What
we
would
asked
it be?
Well, I mean, we'll see. You know, I mean, we talked about this a little bit earlier. We don't have specific designs that we could talk about. You
Right.
know,
I mean, you could
on
take
here.
all those movies from the 80s we like.
What
You know,
Flash
it just
Gordon?
has to be.
I know they're doing Flash Gordon already with Overlord, but were you
I
a
love
Flash
the I
Gordon
love
guy?
the song.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
I mean,
you
no,
gotta
but that
be-
song gets me so pumped that
Yeah.
it's like you want to do it almost because of that.
Well, I mean, there's tons of stuff in the '80s that they are doing. There's ways that have been pitched. I mean, I don't know if you guys were He-Man fans. I was a huge,
Oh,
Yeah,
huge
sure.
He-Man fan. Yeah.
huge
Saw that
He-Man fan.
That's coming back, right? Yeah.
It is.
There's
but here's-
another side of Skeletor,
yeah,
that
well,
we're going to show, the
but-
softer side.
But there was a side to him in the 2002 reboot that they did to where you didn't learn about him. Again, this is very similar to what we're talking about here. Things like you said with Johnny, you learned why he was the way he was. He was human at one point. And then that happened to him, and you learned the backstory of it. And I thought the mythology was set up very well in that. I always thought that Masters of the Universe could be Lord of the Rings meets Star
Yeah.
Wars. That's what I always thought it was. And they're going to go Thor Ragnarok with it, which is not.
I
it's
remember
not
as a
movie,
kid, you know, all I cared about was He-Man. I had the
Yeah.
Grayskull Castle, I had the whole thing, and then that movie came out with Dolph, and it was just, even as a kid, I mean, my threshold was like Police Academy 5, and I was just like, this just isn't good.
not
and
good.
And it kind of like killed He-Man for
Yeah,
me
you're
for
an
a period of
attorney
time.
for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
Oh, the Keymaster? Get out of here.
Yeah.
All right, let's try. You got a phone call for us, Cody? All right, thank you so much. Hey, you are in Collider Live. What do we got?
Hey, Peter Peppers, what's up, man? This is Roland Wilson in Atlanta, Georgia.
What's
I
up,
called
man?
on episode 3, and I'm back.
Nice to have you back. So listen, you got the creators of Cobra Kai here. What do you got for us today?
Oh my God, they're a godsend, man. Like the show that they created, because the Karate Kid is like my Star Wars too, Christian. So whatever they did, season 1 was a miracle. I got my nephew and my nieces into it. You know, they know dick all about the Karate Kid. So what y'all did was magic.
Thank
you.
That's the season 2 poster.
So.
You might not know Dick All, but you'll like it. What do you hope to see?
Question,
Yeah, go
question.
ahead. Go ahead.
Question. So I live in Atlanta. I work for the government, or I did. I just got laid off. I want to be an extra on the show. If you guys are doing anything, let me know, please.
All right.
Try
Well,
to get on.
if we continue
And
to make the show, we will. So we certainly have background casting that is always online on Facebook. That's very easy to find. I know it's a very, very rich community there of filmmakers and actors and background actors. So we'd love to have you.
What school would you want to be, Cobra Kai or Miyagi-Do?
Cobra Kai, man. What you did with Cobra Kai is amazing. Like it almost turned me against Daniel, and I know that could happen. Karate Kid Part 3, nobody ever talks about it, but it's the dopest. You know what I mean? Like that ending scene when Mike Barnes is talking all that shit to him. I'm like, and Daniel gets up because you know he's scared. I mean, that's beautiful right there, man. The rest of the movie, yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Well, thank
it's
you.
about that
let
moment.
me be quick. Christian,
Yeah.
I want you to do stand up again. Josh McCougar, you keep being scared in movies. I love it, man. It's funny. Roxy, you're the best thing to this show. Brett, I don't know where Brett is, but he's dope too.
Brett's trying to figure out where his phone is.
You out. You're the man.
I hope.
Creators of Cobra Kai, you keep doing your thing.
Thank you.
Love you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, see the excitement. He said, "I want you to keep being scared, and you keep being awesome." So, but that's what I'm talking about. You guys are getting that so much. You can see it in your faces, George. It's like you've done something great, and it's not even just because, well, you made a really good TV show. No, you brought a lot. I mean, there's a lot of good feelings that people feel with that because of the lessons that were taught and what he just said. The way that you were able to switch around and make Johnny human. That like. Is Daniel going to be the bad guy at first? So we think, and it's ultimately not the case as we find out.
It's one of the things that we find kind of hilarious is that like we view. I mean, Daniel LaRusso is. We all are Daniel LaRusso fans,
Yeah.
and we believe that some of the things that he does on the show are things that are regretful for him, but most of what he's doing is well intentioned, and he's just like living his life and. Just the fact that we enter enter the series with Johnny and just his life is so rough and he's having such a hard time that everyone just wants it to work out for Johnny so bad that Daniel is by default the villain to a lot of people. But as we've talked about a number of times, like for us, we like to show the good and bad in everybody on the show, and it's they're both protagonists. They're both antagonists on their show.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about Kreese for a second here too, because now this is something you can talk about because it's in the trailer. We've seen now because I had the question last time we spoke about, well, is he a ghost? Like, well, it is he. And
We
it's
can
clear-
confirm that he's a ghost.
Yeah, well,
He's definitely a
he's
ghost.
clearly not a ghost. You see him in the trailer.
He's a
like,
solid ghost.
He's
yes.
a solid ghost.
Not one of those Slimer ghosts. he doesn't like those types.
He's Freeman and a baby ghost.
Yeah, exactly.
All ghosts drink Coors Banquet. You know this. So in the trailer, you see that he's holding Coors Banquet,
Which is
can.
also
That
a
makes
ghost.
sense. That's
yes.
a confirmation that he is a Coors Banquet
No,
ghost.
he's an alive human being.
Yes. Well, I mean, that was the thing, and I told you, I was curious. I trust in you guys very much so to where we're gonna get and Martin said the same thing. We didn't have a chance to really learn a lot about him. We saw what he was like, the evil villain in the first movie, and very effective. And in the second one, he's in the parking lot scene. The third one to me was just like I felt like they were just trying to.
It was
play.
a cartoon.
It was a
yeah.
cartoon. It was a cartoon. But this is we're the same thing you do with Johnny. We're humanizing.
Well,
him.
Johnny had more built into him that was human than Kreese. I mean, Johnny had the beginning of the movie. He likes to say, I used to be the ace degenerate. Now I'm an ex degenerate. I got 1 year to make it work.
Right.
And then at the end of the movie, obviously, he gives Daniel the trophy, and he kind of questions Kreese in a moment. Like Johnny showed signs of not wanting to be what he was made, which gave us this beautiful, rich place to go with that character. Kreese was one note, and intentionally so. He was meant to be the big bad wolf, Darth Vader. He represented all that is dark and evil in the world of karate. But that also gives us a great place to go because you get to start asking those questions like, does he really believe those things? If he does, what made him that way? Right. Was he always like that? All those things that you can ask to dissect a philosophy gives you just plenty of runway to go.
and like where the hell
like
he's
that.
been and why he's been gone, right?
Yeah, all that mystery.
Okay, Riley, got anything else Facebook-wise? Then we can take one more call. Okay, we'll take a call. Hey, you're in Collider Live. Who do we got?
Hey, what's up, all? It's Chris Woodburn.
What's up, Chris? How you doing, brother? Hey, so you got the creators of Cobra Kai. What do you got for us today?
Well, first I want to tell them I absolutely adored season 1. I'm beyond hyped for season 2, and now I know I'm in the minority, but I really enjoyed Karate Kid 3.
That's what.
And my question is, where is Terry Silver and Mike Barnes?
Thank God you called because we've never had that question before. Now, who are these people you mentioned again? Terry Barnes.
It's fun. It is fun. I mean,
love
it's fun having. It was like it's another book from like our Old Testament.
Yeah.
That's like the one that you didn't learn in school as
Numbers.
much as the others.
That's right.
But it has its followers.
There's a generation.
Yeah.
There-
Well, you guys referenced them.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, we referenced it, but it was one of those things that we always talk about. Hayden has a younger brother who would watch HBO during a particular time in his childhood where Karate Kid 3 was on over and over and over again.
That's kind of where he started.
Yeah, and that's one that like means a ton to him, and we love Karate Kid 3 because it dives into Cobra Kai a little bit deeper.
Right.
Well,
you
that's
know?
the thing
right.
that's great. Yeah, you get deeper into that's where you do have some like backstory with Kreese and Terry Silver and yeah, there's Barnes.
The amount of story that you can dredge up from Karate Kid 3 is at once ridiculous, but also very valuable if looked at through a certain
You can
lens.
spin some mythology
Yeah.
out of it because it's funny that you guys we've heard from 2 callers about the Karate Kid 3 being their thing, and it has their audience because even when we had Martin the other day, Martin's like, well, yeah, Cobra Kai was Kreese's thing. He started it, and someone in the comments like, Terry Silver started Cobra Kai. And they're like screaming at him. But listen, season 2, it comes out at the end of this month. Cannot wait to see it. As you guys know, anything else that we should know about the season going in, or just embrace and no mercy?
It's
No mercy.
April 24th.
April 24th, all episodes drop. It's going to be a cruel summer.
takes place pretty much right at the end of
It does.
how
Okay.
season 1 ended, kind of Back to the Future 2 style. Like you're just gonna get sucked back into the drama. So maybe watch
All
the last
questions
couple
will be
episodes
answered.
from last season.
I can't wait. All right, well, we'll see you guys next time on this show when season 3 hits. So thank you very much, guys. Once again, Cobra Kai, Josh, Hayden, John, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure as always. And watch Cobra Kai. If you haven't watched season 1, you are doing yourself a disservice. Go and watch that show immediately.